So our first panel today is entitled, "This is not a sideline discussion, using my platform for social action." And we have a very impressive panel today. I'd like to introduce to you Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. He was born Chris Jackson and is a record-setting All-American shooting guard, or was at Louisiana State, being drafted number 3 overall by the Denver Nuggets in 1990. Initially inspired by the autobiography of Malcolm X and later by Muslim friends and mentors in Denver, he converted to Islam in March of 1993. However, at the peak of his career, Abdul-Rauf became the center of controversy around the league when he refused to stand for the national anthem. Subsequently, he was suspended from the NBA. After his departure from the NBA and professional basketball, Abdul-Rauf continued to train NBA players, college athletes, and high school prospects. He remains active in the Islamic community where he participates in events, programs, and basketball camps, infusing principles of religion with disciplines in achieving success in sports and life. We're so happy to have you. Next, we have Keri, ESPN's Senior Director of Communications. She's responsible for setting the strategic communications effort for all college sports events and studio content. Potts joined ESPN from NCAA in 2003 and has worked on properties ranging from the NFL, NBA, and ESPN Original Entertainment to ESPN Films and its inaugural slate of the award-winning 30 for 30 documentary series, The ESPYs, and the launch of ESPNW, which is ESPN's first dedicated women's business. Potts was co-captain of the Syracuse University women's volleyball team and remains its first and only first-team academic All-American. Beyond sports, Potts is known for her work over the past 6 years as a victims advocate, anti-sexual violence speaker, and rape crisis counselor, having chronicled her own assault and the international prosecution of her attacker in 2008 for Marie Claire Magazine, the Travel Channel, and Discovery ID. Potts has served as a victims advocate at Grady Memorial Hospital for 3 years and now volunteers with the Gwinnett Rape Crisis Center. Next, we have Thabo Sefolosha. He was born and raised in Switzerland and is the first Swiss NBA player. He's fluent in Italian, French, and English. Originally, he was selected by the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, 13th overall, of the 2006 NBA draft, but his draft rights were traded to Chicago. He's an 11-year NBA veteran. Thabo is currently in his 3rd season as a forward for the Atlanta Hawks. He's also played for the Chicago Bulls and the Oklahoma City Thunder, as well as in the Turkish Basketball League, in France, in Italy, and in Switzerland. Two-time All-Pro, Pro Bowler, and Georgia native Takeo Spikes was a first-round draft pick, 13th overall, and enjoyed a 15-year professional career in the NFL. Off the field, Spikes has taken his passion for photography to the next level with the publication of his first book, Behind the Mask, a collection of intimate short stories and photographs of some of the greatest linebackers to ever play in the NFL. In December 2016, Spikes earned his MBA from the University of Miami while continuing his broadcasting career, which has included numerous television and radio appearances, including ESPN's NFL coverage, CBS Sunday Morning, NBC Sports Pro Football Talk, and SiriusXM's NFL Radio, among many others. Next, allow me to introduce Dominique Wilkins. He's the most celebrated player to ever put on a Hawks uniform. Hall of Famer Dominique Wilkins now serves as the Hawks Vice President of Basketball and as the team's analyst for the Hawks broadcast networks. The 6'8" forward, who concluded his NBA career with 26,668 points, is the 11th all-time leading scorer in league history. His 24.8 career scoring average is 13th In the all-time charts, Wilkins' 23,292 points with the Hawks are franchise best, and he ranks second overall in team history in steals, fourth in rebounds, sixth in block shots, and seventh in assists, so not really a big deal. And we're not done. He's extremely active with local and national charity endeavors. Wilkins has done work with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Special Olympics, Muscular Dystrophy Association, and American Lung Association. In March 2010, Wilkins was honored by the Georgia State Legislature as they presented a state resolution naming him the Diabetes Ambassador for the state of Georgia. He's also a Diabetes Ambassador for Novo Nordisk, a world leader in diabetes care. And the moderator of this panel is Marc Spears. Marc is a senior NBA writer for ESPN's The Undefeated, a sports, political, and pop culture website owned and operated by ESPN that describes itself as the premier platform for exploring the intersections of race, sports, and culture. The San Jose State graduate has been covering the NBA since the 1999-2000 season, beginning with the Denver Nuggets for the Denver Post 8 years ago, or for 8 years. The former college basketball player has also covered the Boston Celtics for the Boston Globe from 2007 to 2009, as well as the NBA for Yahoo Sports, before being hired by The Undefeated. The 22-year sports journalist was recently named by the Associated Press as one of the nation's top 10 sports beat writers. Marc is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and chair of the NABJ Sports Task Force, and he's won numerous awards. Spears also co-produced an award-winning documentary called Katrina Kopp in the Superdome. He's also on the board of the San Jose State Institute for Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. Welcome. Turning it over to your capable hands. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you. Good morning. Nah, I'm not her. All right, I'm not a superstar anchor woman and all that. So I'm just a sports writer, but I'm gonna try to figure this out. So bear with me. It's just going to be very conversational. We're going to talk about social issues. We're going to talk about Kaepernick. We're going to talk about Muslims. We're going to talk about everything, and I think it's going to be enlightening and fun. This is a fantastic panel, so I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, Sine. Thank you, Zinga, for having me. And we're just going to go right into it. And I have to start with the human highlight film. Dominique, I had this poster on my wall when I was a kid. My dad actually took me to your game when I was a junior in high school.
I'm not that old.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to mess with you. You shot the ball a lot, too. But the first thing I definitely want to talk to Dominique about, I mean, obviously, we know him strongly for is being the face of Hawks basketball and one of the greatest players that ever lived, and he should have been on the dream team. But
I was hurt.
Yeah, exactly. But what I think a lot of people don't know is that Dominique has type 2 diabetes.
Type 2, yes.
And one thing we talked about in the back, and one thing I want to kind of introduce you guys to everybody before we jump right into it. But you know, Dominique and I talked about how diabetes has really affected African Americans. 13.2% of all African Americans aged 20 or older have been diagnosed with diabetes. It seems like there's twice as many chances as someone black to get diabetes as white. And also, Dominique talked about with me how perhaps in the older generation of black men, they don't really like going to the hospital. You kind of got to twist the older brother's arm to go to the hospital, my dad included. I'm certainly knowledgeable of that, but I wanted to first ask you, Dominique, about your impact in the world of diabetes and the current struggle with it.
Well, first of all, diabetes has been a part of my family since I can remember. My father died from diabetes. My grandfather died from diabetes. And when you see family members go through amputations, that's the beginning of the end. And when you're a great athlete you think you're invincible, that nothing can ever happen to you. Well, I found out very quickly, a year after I retired, that I was having some problems. And found out I was a type 2 diabetic. My sugar level was over 350, could have fell into a diabetic coma. But I decided to not let diabetes do to me what it did to my father and grandfather, that I was going to manage it, I was going to fight it, I was going to look at it as another opponent that I compete with. And I got back to doing some things I used to do, that's with diet, exercise, and unfortunately at that time, going on medication. And I lost 34 pounds in 2.5 months. I just decided that I wasn't not going to let this win. And 18 years later, I'm on top of it, still managing it. And when you're stricken by a disease like diabetes, it makes you focus a little bit harder on your health. And you start doing things that you would normally never do. So I started to change my diet. I started to exercise a little more and take medication. And I treat my diabetes very aggressively. I'm not one of those guys that I might take a pill today and then I won't take another one for next week. And I think as African-American men, we're afraid of what we don't understand. And so what is the easiest way to get away from a disease or not talk about it is to ignore it. And all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable because it's not going anywhere. It's going to catch up with you. And 1 in 3 kids in this country have diabetes or type 2 diabetes. There's over 360,000 people here in Atlanta alone who have diabetes or pre-diabetes. But I got to tell you this, when I hear people say they're pre-diabetic, for me, it's like saying you're a little pregnant. Either you're diabetic or you're not. When your sugars are over 300, you're diabetic. And so people try to find excuses not to manage it.
Well, next up, we have Takeo Spikes. That's a football player's name, isn't it? Takeo. We actually got to meet about a month or so ago. We were at San Jose State, speaking on a diversity panel, and it was a pleasure watching them play. I remember when you guys, you lost to Arkansas in 1996, the SC West Championship.
So you remembering too much right now.
I covered that Arkansas. I'm still wondering how y'all lost that, but you're a great player. Anyways, he's done a very enlightening, really cool project called Behind the Mask, in which he's gone and interviewed some of the greatest linebackers that we've ever seen. And obviously he was one of them, where not only is it enlightening to hear what these guys had to say about the game, but what Takeo is trying to do is teach the listener from these guys' perspective of how to be great, how to make a choice to be great. And I wanted to see if you could talk about your project a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a special project. It took me 2 years to complete. Behind the Mask, my book, coffee table book. I think what makes it so special, several different aspects to it. Not only did I do the photography in it, but I also co-wrote it as well. And what's important about my project is a lot of people go through life, maybe halfway through life, before they realize that everybody is not born. They were not born to be great. A lot of people think that, okay, I want to be successful, and then you look at people who has the tag or the label as being successful, you think they were born to come out, they were born to come out that way. What I found out way before I did this project, what was very interesting to me is that even though we're all different, we're all the same. And what makes these guys so different in my book, including me as well, is that they had a choice, they made a decision, they remained focused, and they made a commitment to something that was way bigger than them. So for me, when I created this project, I want people to understand and know, regardless of whatever profession that you're in, you're not going to wake up and just say, hey, you know what, I'm great at it. You have to make a decision, you have to make that commitment and sacrifice. And that's what Behind the Mask is all about, sharing intimate stories on how did they become an outlier.
Thank you. Next up, Thabo Sefolosha from the Hawks. I also had the pleasure to talk to him a couple months ago for the Undefeated, and a very open, candid discussion about what happened to him when he had an altercation with a New York City cop who broke his leg. The one thing that really struck a chord with me about Thabo is he could have easily just walked away and did some 20 hours of community service and just took a slap on the wrist and moved on with his life. But he wasn't going to do that. He wanted to fight. He wanted to exonerate his name. He wanted to make a point that police brutality will not be tolerated, which is certainly something that you need to be commended for. And he fought and he won. He won the case, and now he has a civil suit coming in perhaps as early as August. But I wanted to ask you about why you were determined to fight. Why didn't you just throw in the towel and move on and pay the little civil money or whatever? And what impact do you think what you did had on society?
Well, to me, it was kind of somewhat of an easy decision when I decided not to take the deal that they were, giving me after the incident, and decided to fight. I had nothing to. That night, I didn't do anything wrong, and what happened, was just totally wrong and one-sided. So, for me to go to court and have a chance to tell the world, tell everybody my side of the story, was important to me. I believe in justice, and that's what I stood for that night and throughout the whole trial. So, it was an easy decision, even though it was a lot that was at stake. But at the same time, it's something that I needed to do. I couldn't really feel comfortable with myself taking any type of plea deal and letting it slip underneath the rug. So, whether I wanted it or not, I was thrown into that conversation of police violence and also the race conversation that's attached to it. So, it's something that every day now, I live my life the same way, but it opened my eyes to a lot of different things.
Thank you. I actually want you to continue your applause for Miss Keri Potts, because she's a very, very brave woman for what she has endured and overcome. She actually was, a man tried to sexually assault her in Italy, and she fought him and got away and went to court, and unfortunately, I'm sure you didn't get what you wanted for the punishment for him, but luckily this is a very former college volleyball star from Syracuse who had the athleticism and the strength to fight away and leap buildings and did amazing things to get out. And unfortunately, a lot of women aren't as fortunate or as strong as she is to be able to get out of that situation. So now she's certainly been one of the best national advocates on fighting for women on sexual assault. And so my question for you is twofold. How has athletics prepared you to help you work on anti-sexual violence, and what has it been like to work in a predominantly male industry?
Thank you. I love that question. Well, both those questions. I always talk to people about the gift of having been an athlete, in whether it brought out in me or enhanced, tenacity and just relentless pursuit. I mean, everyone here knows you keep plodding away and keep digging and and an opportunity will come, and you'll have your success point. And for what athletics gave me was both when I was being assaulted, to just hang in there and say, this guy is trying to kill me. Like you've just got to dig down and just tap into that kind of fight. And throughout the entire escape, through climbing down these buildings, bleeding, I was like, you've got this, Keri, you can just do this, just keep going, it'll get better. And so what athletics gave me was that refrain and that reserve to draw from, to continue even in really adverse conditions. And the decision to prosecute overseas was extremely difficult. I mean, I had all these people telling me it was impossible. It's very isolating to be a sexual assault victim internationally. There are no services here, okay? Everything is for domestic. And, but I just kept chipping away at it. I would find any resource I could. I would ask for help. And you know, you guys, I had his picture on my refrigerator, okay? And I'd be eating my cereal in the morning. I'm like, I am coming for you, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna get you. Oh, you know, like, just, you know, like, because I was terrified. I mean, I was terrified I'm gonna fail. And so what do? You tell yourself you're gonna, you know, you bolster yourself all the ways you do as an athlete when you're coming in volleyball up against a 6'5" hitter, and you're like, this is not gonna go well. You know, this is not good. So I've seen it, and even in the work, in working at Grady, the tenacity you have to be in that chaotic level 1 trauma center, and you're trying to tell a victim who's had the worst moment of her or his life, you know, I got you, it's gonna be okay. It doesn't feel okay in that moment. And then your second question, what was that? That was?
In the workplace.
In the workplace, okay. So it's not just being, I get the question a lot. I mean, look at me, right? This is very familiar. Where he's like, hi.
Well, not all these brothers working with you. It's not.
That's true. Well,
you're in Atlanta, so maybe here.
But I actually like to say, I'm a sexual assault survivor in a very male environment, in a landscape that is constantly addressing this and discussing this, and I actually embrace it. I feel like I'm a resource, okay? And I know nobody wants to talk about this. Talk about uncomfortable, right? I mean, you want to kill a conversation, be like, hi, I'm a sexual assault survivor. I mean, nobody wants to, whoa, you work with rape victims, great. How can I get out of this conversation? I love that I'm like, yeah, this is what we look like. You know, I'm not a porcelain doll. I'm not unable to go on with my life, and I'm here to talk about it. I am a resource for journalists, not just at ESPN. I get calls from competitors asking for my opinion on how they're presenting, you know, a certain case that's in the news, the language. I'm a resource for my coworkers. And I live in I really love the space I'm in, that I kind of straddle sports and anti-sexual violence, because I'm able to have that conversation in the place that I think it needs to be had, okay? And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, you know, sexual violence, it is not just women, as we know. It feeds on the most vulnerable populations, okay? The physically and mentally challenged, the homeless, women, children. It kills me for children. And I am a warrior for them. I am blessed to be in a space where I am going to shed light on this and have these really uncomfortable conversations and sit up here in front of this room and start your 9 a.m. talking about sexual violence. Like, this is a gift, and it's because I'm in sports and I'm a sexual assault survivor that has told people about it, and I get this opportunity. So it's been a blessing.
Thank you. Now, I recently wrote a story in Undefeated about who had you guys know what a handle is? You're basketball fans, right? Who has the best dribbling skills in the NBA? So kind of through the All-Star break, the consensus was it was Kyrie Irving from the Cleveland Cavaliers. This man over here, I don't know, I think he had him. He had the quickest crossover I ever seen, because I don't think you could see the ball when he crossed it over. And that's being real. And he knows I'm telling the truth. Dominique knows what I'm talking about. His jumper was so wet, it didn't even hit the rim. And when it did, he would be mad. His free throws, you just hear the net. I mean, I really enjoyed watching him play. I got to cover the end of his career when he was playing in Vancouver. And then it kind of just disappeared into obscurity. And you would hear these stories of legend about what happened to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And I was always fascinated. I was very excited to meet him today, because we missed each other a couple times in the Bay Area. But his story is still fascinating to me, about what happened 20 years ago when he boycotted the flag, especially now with Kaepernick. But my question to you is, I wanted to take you back 20 years when you were doing a protest, I guess, for a while, and people didn't even notice, but finally a reporter did, and it created the national firestorm. Take me back to that, and kind of, if you could replay that story.
Yeah, I had not been standing for about 4 months the previous year. And it just stemmed from, I grew up not having a lot of confidence in myself academically. And there were a lot of things that I grew up seeing that I knew were wrong, but didn't have the confidence to speak out about it. And I didn't want to live that life anymore. And when I became a Muslim, I began to read more, and I came across a lot of literature. And I began to learn a lot about just different things that I'd never heard before, what was going on in the world, not only internationally, but domestically. And so I just made a conscious decision just not to stand. And my belief was that I want to give my allegiance to only God. Not that there's anything wrong with symbols, but if the symbol is not reflective of the character of what they say it's supposed to represent, I don't want to stand for it. And so it wasn't with the intentions of receiving any publicity from it, getting any notoriety from it. This was my own personal struggle. But it so happened that someone was looking and they saw it. And I think Todd Ely at the time, the assistant GM for the Nuggets, came to me and he said, a journalist noticed that you weren't standing. Would you like to talk? I didn't see any problem with it, because these are conversations that we have on the bus, on the plane. People talk about things all the time. And so after the conversation is when it blew up. And the next day at the arena before playing the Orlando Magic, there was a flood of cameras in my face, and they asked me the question of what I thought, and I gave my honest opinion, which I still believe today. And I spoke my conscience, and it went from there.
Going back to that, and I'm going to bring you guys all of this as well, but how much differently would your stance be now with the way social media is? If there was Twitter 20 years ago, if there was Instagram and all those things, how would it have been a good thing or bad thing for what you did?
I definitely think it would have been different. Then, even though, the media controlled the whole narrative, even though I was getting some supportive letters coming in, yes, I had death threats and all of those things, but if they didn't choose to show that, the people don't know. In Kaepernick's case, because social media, the advent of social media is so big now, you can hear those voices. And it's not so easy for the media to hide the other side of that dialogue. And prime example, there was a football player named Abdul-Rauf. He went into the end zone, and he went into prostration. Immediately, the NFL wanted to fine him and suspend him. But then people got on the social media, what about Thabo? And they pulled back from the suspension. And so that's the power now. Many people have those voices, and you can hear you can't silence those voices so easily.
Thabo, how did social media help or hurt your situation in New York?
I don't know exactly. I wasn't able to really talk too much because it was a trial going on and everything. So, but I think I had a lot of people just showing a lot of love and telling me that they were behind me and supporting what I was doing.
Keri, how is social media today perhaps maybe helping some of the sexual assault victims?
Well, I can say from personal experience, and then from today, when I wrote my article for Marie Claire, it published in 2010, but I was pursuing it while I was having my trial, because I was trying to find other victims. I was actually going to the media to publish this piece so other people could come and say, hey, this is how you actually do this. This is how you pursue someone overseas. But when it broke, Twitter was the new thing. And as a victim, I had been private up until that point. And it was on blast. That article went around the world. I was hiding under my desk, and I think I had a panic attack, I'm pretty sure. because I'm getting phone calls and emails from all these people in sports wanting to talk to me about my sexual assault, and I just had not, me doing it in Marie Claire, I controlled it, but when it gets out in the public sphere, you don't control anything. You're watching people talk about you, about the worst day of your life, and pick it apart. And luckily for me, it was very positive. But then later on, when I did an episode for Discovery ID about it, I sat there watching people talk about me, just destroying me. You know, hey, Keri, the only thing open after midnight are bodegas and women's legs. I know you know that. Disgusting. And it was crushing, and I was devastated. And so social media today with sexual assault, it has us talking about it more, and there's more ways to give victims your support, but it also amplifies the really bad amongst us. And for sexual assault, that is one of the worst things. That's what people fear, and it keeps them quiet. That's why people don't come forward. So now social media has a way to both lift them up and slam them down. So I actually don't know what I think of it in terms of how good it is, but we're at least talking about it.
I recently wrote a story about Andre Iguodala of the Warriors using the word master as far as having to answer to who he works for. And my response brought some social media response where some people called me coon, and then some people called me great. So I guess the way I looked at it was like, well, 90% of the people like what I said, 10% don't. But amazingly, Marc Cuban and all people, and Thabo, you'll like this, he gave me a social media anecdote. He basically said, go look and see how many people are following the people that are talking the most shit, excuse my language. And if usually those people have like 55 followers, 100 followers, and there's so many friends of mine or there's celebrity people who get so upset over some dude in Nebraska saying he's a coon, you know what I mean? So I just laugh at it and move on. And some people are really bad, and you do what you need to do. Sometimes you say something, but for the most part, the way they get a voice is by you retweeting them or you quoting them or stuff like that. But Dominique, could you even imagine if you had Twitter or Instagram back then?
It'd have been great. It'd have been great.
Well, not bad.
That would have been great.
Now, some
it was just
some
social
people
back then, but we didn't have a lot of media.
Yeah. Now some people say it would be bad for Jordan, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was. It would have been.
But
it would have been
you
great.
know, when you was single, you was hanging in clubs in Atlanta. You might not have want them pictures out there.
That wasn't me.
All right.
That was somebody else in the family. But
I sympathize. I sympathize, though, because as a publicist at ESPN, do you know how many times I'm on the phone with one of our guys, like, let's talk about that last tweet you just put out there? You know, it's dangerous in the wrong hands.
Well, you know, now everything can be magnified so big. You know, and you look at what Iguodala said, and I'm trying to figure out where he was going with that. You know, sometimes when you go through a tough moment in sports, the worst thing you can do is put yourself in a position to be ridiculed and criticized. And that's what Iguodala did. So I'm trying to figure out the comment that he made. And it was the wrong place, the wrong time for that. So, you know, he put a lot of pressure on himself, a lot of criticism that you didn't need at that time because, you know, you're going through a little down moment, you're adding more fuel to the fire.
Yeah. Now, Dominique played in the age, too, where he was blessed, and this is showing my age a little bit. I used to watch his games on TBS, and I used to watch Michael Jordan's game on WGM for some of the older school people in here. And so people got to see you play, whereas I talked to Darrell Griffith, who played for the Utah Jazz, was a great player. People barely saw him. But now things are very, very different. But for you, Takeo, you were basically in your heyday at a time when all the social media stuff really erupted.
Yeah, I remember Twitter coming out. You know, I was in my 10th year in the league. I played 15, so at first when I saw it, I was thinking, man, we in trouble. We are in trouble. But, you know, you hear about the horror stories. You hear about some guys who put down their thoughts and they really don't think about what they're about to say before they hit send. Yeah, exactly, Trump. But ultimately, overall, it's a powerful tool. It's a powerful asset that I think that it really complements not only athletes, but celebrities, entertainers, because so many times when we have something going on, as if the event that we're here now, we used to have to rely on people to tell our story. And sometimes it came out the way that we wanted it to, but more times it didn't. And I think by the resource of having social media, especially Twitter, you have an opportunity to not only connect with your fans, but you have an opportunity to connect with the world. And you give them the opportunity to hear exactly how you feel, how passionate you are, and your message is not diluted down by maybe a reporter who really don't like you, or the way that they see it, how they want it to be conveyed.
Mahmoud, I want to bring you to Colin Kaepernick, and I'm sure people are pretty familiar with Colin Kaepernick's story and his stance. When the news first came out about him taking a knee, what were your thoughts? And I know your phone rang off the hook after that came out.
I mean, what am I going to say? I mean, of course I can't agree with him because I did it 20 years prior.
Yeah.
And I was for him, as I said before, 1,000%. I understood what he was coming from. I knew that there was going to be huge backlash as a result of it. I understood also that, you know, when you make, I think George Jackson once said that he used the word revolutionary. And when you make decisions like that, this is actually what you become in a sense. He said, expect your life to change, in so many words. And so I felt for him, and I was just hoping and praying that it was something that he really believed in and that he was going to be able to sustain, because it's not easy when you go against the grain. People get offended. You know, you make people's life uncomfortable as well as your own. So, but I was for him in the decision that he made.
How many conversations have you had with him? And I believe you've spoken to him, but what advice have you given him?
Well, we only met once, and my initial impression of him, he seems to be a bright young man. The wheels are turning. He's thinking. He's trying to really find out who he is and what his destiny is. But I kind of shy away from giving people advice because you hear so often, you know, especially when an athlete makes a decision, and in particular when that athlete happens to be black, well, who are you listening to, or who gave you advice, as if though you don't have a mind of your own. So we just sat and talked and had dialogue. I listened to him, he listened to me, but I kind of shy away from it, from giving a person advice. Let me advise you, or let me tell you this. And but even after the fact, I love the fact of what he's doing in the movement that he's created with I think Know Your Rights.
Yeah.
So he's really moving forward with this, and he seems to be very sincere.
Do you how much did what you did affect your career? Did you feel like you were eventually blackballed from the NBA? And two, do you feel like the NBA deserves to give you an apology?
That's a tough one. Whether an apology comes or not, it doesn't really, you know, matter to me. Do I think that it affected my career? Of course. Initially, I shied away from using the term blackball. But as I start thinking about it and how my career, the minutes, how things began to change within the organization, it made more sense that seemed to be the case. But you know, I'm not looking for, I'm at peace with myself and where I am. But yeah, certainly I think that it definitely affected the way my career went. Yeah.
Takeo, you also know Colin pretty well. I know you both played for the Niners at different times, but what was your take when it happened? And I'm sure you've had some conversations with him.
Yeah, he actually came to the 49ers when I was leaving. And I played with San Diego. I had a few conversations with him. Like Mahmoud, I never gave any advice because that's the first time I ever heard somebody say, usually when African-American males come out and take a stance on something, people always go back to the question, well, who have you been getting your advice from? As if, nah, I got a mind of my own. So I stayed away from that. But when he first came out with it, I disagreed. And I was like, what is he doing? I was disappointed, but a day later, he came out and expanded on the reason why. And he talked about if America is so beautiful, I'm paraphrasing, if it's so beautiful and give us all the opportunity that we need, why is this oppression going on and nobody is doing anything about it or nobody is saying anything about it? And when he made that point, and I really thought about it, and I went back and did the research of every situation that had happened, and I said, you know what? He has a valid point. And so I thought he was a day late coming out, expanding on his answer and his reason why he was taking the knee, but I understood why. And for me, it really brought up the conversation, and it made me understand that what the flag means to you, it may not mean the same thing to me. What it means to Dominique, it may not mean the same thing to Thabo. And so at the end of the day, if we're going to move forward, you have to have an open mind, but you have to respect everybody's culture and their opinion.
Dominique, you look like you're itching.
I'm always itching. You know what? We're on the outside looking in, so we don't really know what his strong and real beliefs are. Everybody have their own beliefs. I never judge anybody because I don't like to be judged. My way of celebrating or my way of representing the flag may be, like you said, different than Takeo's. Just because the flag it's been through a lot of controversy over time, but I'm one of those people who don't look backwards. I don't look in the past. I look at what kind of impact that I can make moving forward. And I have my own ways of really representing who I am as a person. And so I represent it in certain areas. I found that in healthcare. I found that in disability and kids. I found that in several different ways, but my way of really representing where I come from, because I grew up in the civil rights era, so I know racial injustices. We had a black prom and a white prom. I went through all that. But at the same time, it's very hard for me to stay in the past. And I had a conversation with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar once, and he said to me, he said, it's amazing I can't get a job in the NBA as a head coach. I said, unfortunately, Kareem, it's the way you interact with people. And I said, unfortunately, people didn't understand your beliefs because you didn't explain it, where people can really see who you are, what you come from, and what you stand for. So people are afraid of what they don't understand. And so he didn't find that platform to represent who he was where people didn't judge him. Because to this day, people judge Kareem on not his basketball attributes, but him being a Muslim. I don't like to be judged, and I'm not going to judge anybody because I love Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But in this country, we find ways of discrediting people. We've done that through time. So how do you combat that? You stay above it, and you prove to people who you are by your actions. And if you can do that and you can believe strongly in yourself, nobody can break who you are. I don't let in. And look, and we've talked about this a lot. You know, our organization went through some changes. It wasn't until guys like Steve Koonin, Tony Ressler, and all that ownership group came in and made it right. Because our organization suffered for a very long time. There's many people who said to me, how are you still here? Why are you still representing this franchise? Well, I represent a franchise that I helped build, and I love this franchise, so I'm never going to do anything to hurt it. So it wasn't about money. It wasn't about attributes. It's about the love of the city and the people who represent our franchise. And our ownership group and Steve and his team has done a wonderful job of changing the landscape, changing what you think about this organization. And that's what's an important thing. Everything else don't matter to me. I don't care about the past. I care about what we do today that dictates what we become in the future.
And we'll get back to that too. I'm gonna get back over there. But I did want to ask Thabo, and y'all please chime in after I get his response. But the one thing that kind of stood out to me as the NBA preseason came was like, oh, NBA players gonna get them. Kaepernick did his thing, and now this league 75% black. Boy, I can't wait till the national anthem comes during the NBA games. Then preseason came, and there was some locking of the arms. David West from the Warriors, he actually stood 2 feet behind the rest of his teammates during the national anthem. But for the most part, I kind of feel like Kaepernick's baton was kind of dropped in the NBA, and it didn't continue. Not that it was supposed to or it had to, but it kind of dropped once the NBA season started. So I wanted to ask Thabo, what did the Hawks players talk about behind the scenes about it? I know David West said perhaps it should be an individual thing, not a team thing. But what did you guys talk about? What was your response to it? And how do you think overall the response should have been?
We talked about amongst players because the conversation was coming a lot, especially also with the media asking, oh, what are you guys going to do during the anthem? But like you said, I think it's more something that has to be individually thought, and everybody's fight in a way is a little bit different. So I think to put 12, 15 guys into the same boat and say, okay, we're going to make a stand, what are you exactly standing up for, I respect what Mahmoud did, and also Kaepernick, because they had a real reason why they were doing it. They believed in something and stood firm behind it. And, I respect that. Like I said, also, nowadays with Twitter and all those social media things, a lot of backlash comes from doing such things. But I think, changes never comes easy. I don't know if there's a right way where everybody gonna stand up and applaud if you ask for changes. So at no point in time, I think it comes easy, and what Kaepernick did actually fuel the conversation, and I respect that. But on my end, I respect the country. I'm here playing basketball, doing what I love doing. No country is perfect. I've traveled the world. I've seen many different places. But I respect the flag. I'm here to work, and I respect the environment that I work in, the team, and everything. So for me, it was no point of try to use that platform at that point to do anything like that. But again, I respect people who doing it for the right reason, if they believe in it and stand behind it.
For Mahmoud and Dominique, did you guys think anything when the NBA preseason started? Were you disappointed? Were you okay with the response or the lack thereof from the players?
Well, a lot of these guys are a little closer to it than I am, But, what Thabo said makes a lot of sense. Change is never easy. It's always hard, and someone always has to be the first. And then usually when you're the first, you're the one who get the biggest backlash. And people are quick to judge you. In Mahmoud's case, I think the world in him is a good friend. He was a great player, by the way. I can't imagine what he went through, when the NBA suspended him. We spent most of our lives training to be on this level. This is our livelihood. This is our life. And to have that taken away from you is devastating. And so I can't imagine what he went through over the years dealing with that, because you're taking something, you're almost like taking a baby away from you. That's your life. And so hopefully moving forward that we can let people live in their own lane without it being a controversy or anything that's detrimental to the environment. But my whole focus when I played was we were as one, and we didn't want distractions. We can celebrate and we can we can have different issues that we support and we can talk about. Well, let's do it together, because we in the heat of battle, we don't want any distractions. So our commitment was a little different, because we had to be more together as one back then to be heard. It was very hard for one voice to make an impact, but we can make an impact as a unit. And so that's why we were so close, and that's why we were so together. And Mahmoud would tell you, when we traveled on the road, we traveled together as a family. We had no individualism. We ate together. We went to movies together. Everything we did was as a unit. So we celebrated as a unit, and we, and through disappointment, we stood together. And so it's very hard for me to separate what I believe opposed to what I'm competing about. And I think it's two separate issues, but yeah, that's a major platform for you to be heard, but the timing has to be right. And because I have an opinion, and people know me that I speak up very freely about things I believe in, but I try not to become a crusader, and because I think that's the worst thing you can do.
We're winding up here, but I wanted to get some really quick hits, 30-second hits from you guys. But for you three right here, you're all connected to the Hawks organization. People don't know Takeo's actually on a board.
Really? You on
diversity board for the Hawks as well, with everything that happened that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, and fairy stuff to today. And credit for this woman being here as well. But what strides do you think the Hawks have made since then, and is it going in the right direction?
It's been a lot of strides that's been made. I commend the new leadership, up under Tony Wrestler, Steve Koonin. I was very disappointed going back to 2 years ago with the statements that were made by Bruce Levinson and also the GM Danny Ferry at the time. And so for me, coming in to be a part of the Atlanta Hawks Diversity Board, I wanted to be a part of change because this is home. I grew up here. And understanding the history where going all the way back from the civil rights era all the way up until now, I didn't want Atlanta to be tagged with the stigma of being a racist city or a racist city with sports teams. And so the thing that I'm most proud of is our diversity board coming together as one, but still breaking down into smaller groups. I had the opportunity and was fortunate enough, up under the leadership by Nzinga, appointed to one of the programs that President Barack Obama started, Am I My Brother's Keeper? And so we brought in a lot of at-risk kids to the stadium. They were not at risk because they were getting in trouble. They were at risk because even though they had potential to be successful, they had not seen what success looks like, especially as from an African-American male. And so to be a part of that group, what these guys put together, that was huge. And that's just one of many.
Quickly, Nick.
There have never been a better environment, in my opinion, than we have with the Atlanta Hawks right now. And you're proud to be a part of the organization. You're proud to be a part of the team. You're proud to be a part of the ownership commitment, because what Tony Wrestler has done and said, everything he's said to me has been right on the money. I mean, he's a guy who can walk the walk and talk the talk. And it's never been a time where I felt more comfortable and more at peace when Tony Wrestler and his group and Steve Koonin and them really took this thing over. It was the first time I actually went home and drank a bottle of champagne, because I was happy that we had a major change in this organization, because it was pretty rough before. It was really rough. And so to see the change and see the commitment, and particularly in the community, what we have done in the community with all our courts and really ensuring the community that we really care, has been a special, special project that our team has put together. And I'm just proud to be a part of the new regime that has the best interests of the city and the people who live in the local community. So it's been a wonderful change.
And quickly, Thabo, the last word on this.
I signed actually the summer right before all that with Danny Ferry broke out, but it's been great. The organization is great. The new leadership, I think they definitely doing the right thing in the community, and as players, we definitely feel very comfortable, and they behind us 100% also with different projects that we have in the community. So it's been great.
I want to thank you guys for listening. We give a round of applause to the panel here.